Hi guys, this is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you have yet to do so. And if you get anything from my work, connect the dot, an epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description of this video. Allycatcreations211.com is where you can see all the artwork that I do. It's a portfolio, but if you're interested in purchasing anything or you like something you see and you want something customized, please email me. That's the best way to inquire. 3D memberships is a really great way to basically support me, the channel, keep it going. And once a month, I do raffles where, guess what? You guys get a free entry into my raffles. And most raffle winners are winning. It's a great give and take. I love it. And some of the items that I put for raffle are just about $150 of value, usually pyramids and other things. So please, if you're interested, that's a really great way to support me. And I also have channel member only content where I do and pull oracle cards, and I just don't pull the little decks. I pull a whole plethora of things that helps you steer your life. Spirit only gives what will help you do inner healing, tap into your empowerment, and possibly find where your blockages are. So it's a really great way to give back to the community that supports me and shows up. And I thank all of you for doing that. It means the world to me. Before I begin the secret doctrine, crazy day today. Thankfully, a whole line of storms came through Indiana. My area did get thunderstorms and some storms, but nothing crazy. I thought we were gonna have a lot of tornadoes. It was projected. Thankfully not. Um, I am in a lot of pain, so if you see me shifting, you hear the chair. I don't know where my WD-40 went for the moment, so I do apologize. Also, with Blavatsky, the Waspy book, and your Rancho book, I have projection issues. It's not because I don't know the word. It's because my mouth physically can't get certain things out. I also have really bad teeth. They're all crowned, but they fall down, and I'm also dyslexic. So as I'm getting more people watching my book readings, I just want to ask you to have compassion and some grace when it comes to my word projections or missing over words. I see things that are not there, but my brain registers things that are not there. It happens. So please give me some compassion. This is not audiobook. I am not here recording myself and it needs to be perfect. I'm just doing me. I want you to have your mind expanded in any way, shape, or form, and whatever you heart align with. That's the last thing. Please go within. When I'm doing any of the readings, the Curtis books, Manly P. Hall, Nisha, Blavatsky, whoever, please go into your heart space because my reality is not your reality, and we all perceive reality differently. We all attune and align with different things. That's the beautiful world way of the world. That's how God, the source, all that is, the one infinite creator experiences this beautiful reality. So please take that into account when you have to have an open mind with a lot of these books and just give yourself some grace. So I did a part two. This is going to be part three of stanza 11, I believe. Yeah, let me just double check. I want to believe so. Cyclopean ruins and colossal stones as witness to giants. In his enormous works, Memoirs addresses l'Académie des Sciences de Marville, carrying out the task of proving the reality of the devil and showing his abode in every ancient and modern idol, has collected several hundred pages of historical evidence that in the days of miracle, pagan and biblical, the stones walked, spoke, delivered oracles, and even sung. That finally Christ stone or Christ rock, the spiritual rock that followed Israel, 1 Corinthians, became a Jupiter lapis, swallowed by his father Saturn, under the shape of a stone. We will not stop to discuss the evident misuse and materialization of biblical metaphors simply for the sake of proving the Satanism of idols, though a good deal might be said on this subject, but without claiming any such perpeticism. I don't. We'll get there. And innate psychic faculties for our stones, we may collect in our turn every available evidence on hand to show that A, had there been no giants to move about such colossal rocks, there could never have been a Stonehenge, a Carnic, Brittany, and other such Cyclopean structures. And B, were there no such thing as magic, there could never have been so many witnesses to ocular and speaking stones. In the Arcacia, we find Blasanius confessing. Like I said, I'm butchering everything in names. That in beginning his work, he had regarded the Greeks as mighty stupid for worshiping stones. But having reached Arcadia, he adds, I have changed my way of thinking, therefore, without worshiping stones or stone idols and statues, which is the same a crime Roman Catholics are unwise to reproach pagans with, as they do likewise. One may be allowed to believe in what so many great philosophers and holy men have believed in, without observing to be called an idiot by modern Pausanias. That name is going to boggle me. The reader is referred to volume 6 of the Académie des Inscriptions Memoirs, page 518. If he would study the various properties of flints and pebbles from the standpoint of magic and psychic powers, in a poem on stones attributed to Orpheus, those stones are divided into orphites and siderites, serpent stones, and star stones. The ophyte, in shaggy, hard, heavy black, and has the gift of speech. When one prepares to cast it away, it produces a sound similar to the cry of a child. It is by means of this stone that Helenos foretold the ruin of Troy, his fatherland. Oh boy. Sanchonathan, maybe. And Philo, and I know Philo, in referring to these betels, call them animated stones. Photius repeats that Demoxius, Asclepiades, Isidorus, and the physician Escubus had asserted before him. The latter, Escubus, never parted with his orphites, which he carried in his bosom and received oracles from them, delivered in a small voice resembling a low whistle. Arnobus, a holy man who from a pagan had become one of the lights of the church, Christians tell their readers, confesses he could never meet on his passage with one of such stones without putting it questions, which it answered occasionally in a clear and sharp small voice. Where is the difference between the Christian and the pagan Orphites, we ask? It is also known that the famous stone of Westminster was called Neathol, the speaking stone, which raised its voice only to name the king that had to be chosen. Cambrary says he saw it when it still bore the inscription, and it's in Latin, and I'm not reading Latin. Finally, Studus speaks of a certain Heraclitus who could distinguish at a glance the inanimate stones from which those were endowed with motion, and Pliny mentions stones which run away when a hand approached them. De Marville, who speaks to justify the Bible, inquires very pertinently why the monstrous stones of Stonehenge were called in days of old Quaergar, or the dance of the giants. And then he sends the reader to receive his reply from the Bishop of Gladys. Both the authors of the Voyage des Les Comètes once again, languages I don't speak and will never be able to, and of various learned works on the runes of the Stonehenge. Carnac and West Hoadley give far better and more reliable information upon the particular subject. In those regions, true forests of rocks, immense monoliths are found, some weighing over 500,000 kilograms. These hinging stones of Salisbury Plain are believed to be the remains of a Druidical temple, but the Druids were historical men and not cyclopses, nor giants, who then, if not giants, could ever raise such masses, especially those of Carnac and West Hoadley. Range them in such symmetrical order that they should represent the planisphere, and place them in such wonderful equipoise that they seem to hardly touch the ground, are set in motion at the slightest touch of the finger, and would yet resist the efforts of 20 men who would attempt to displace them. We say that most of these stones are the relics of the last Atlanteans. We shall be answered that all the geologists claim them to be of a natural origin, that a rock, when weathering, losing flake after flake of its substance under influence of weather, assumes this form, that the tors in West England exhibit curious forms also produced by that cause, that finally, as all scientists consider the rocking stones to be of purely natural origin, wind, rain, causing disintegration of rocks and layers. Our statement will be justly denied, especially as we see this process of rock modification in progress around us today. Let us examine the case. But read what geology has to say, and you will learn that often these gigantic masses do not even belong to the countries wherein they are now fixed, that their geological congeners often pertain to strata unknown in those regions and to be found only far beyond the seas. Mr. William Tooke, speculating upon the enormous blocks of granite which are sown over southern Russia and Siberia, tells the reader that where they now rest, they are neither rocks nor mountains, and that they must have been brought over from immense distances with prodigious efforts. Charton speaks of a specimen of such rock from Ireland, which had been submitted to the analysts of an eminent English geologist who assigned to it a foreign origin, most probably African. This is a strange coincidence, as Irish tradition attributes the origin of her circular stones to a sorcerer who brought them from Africa. De Marville sees in the sorcerer an accused Hemite. We see in him a dark Atlantean or perhaps even some earlier Lemurian who had survived till the birth of the British Islands. Giants in every and any case. Should be. Men says, Canberry naively, but nothing to do with, for never could human power and industry undertake anything of this kind. Nature alone has accomplished it all, and science will demonstrate it one day. Nevertheless, it is a human, through gigantic power, which has accomplished it, and no more nature alone than God or the devil. Science, having undertaken to demonstrate that even the mind and spirit of man are simply the production of blind forces, and quite capable of accepting the task. It may come out some fine morning and seek to prove that nature alone has marshaled the gigantic rocks of Stonehenge, traced their position with mathematical precision, given them the form of the Dendra planisphere and of the signs of the zodiac, and brought stones weighing over 1 million of pounds flying from Africa and Asia to England and Ireland. It is the true. That's funny. It is true that Cambry recanted later on. I had believed for a long time, he says, that nature alone could produce those wonders. But I recant. Chance is unable to create such marvelous combinations, and those who place the said rocks in equipoise are the same who have raised the moving masses of the pond of Hillgoat near, I want to say it's French word, Carnu. Sorry, I don't know French, and I butcher it all. Dear John Watson, quoted by the same author, The Antiquities Celtic Weeks, says that when speaking of the moving rocks are rocking stones situated in the slope of Glokar, the enchanter, the astonishing movement of those masses poised in equilibrium made the Celts compare them to gods. In Stonehenge, it is said that Stonehenge is built of the stone of the district, a red sandstone or Surin stone, locally called gray weathers. But some of the stones, especially those which are said to have been devoted to astronomical purposes, have been brought from a distance, probably the north of Ireland. To close the reflections of a man of science in an article upon the subject published in 1850 in the Revenue Archaeology are worthy of being quoted, saying the paper concerning the rocking stones. I need to blow that up because I cannot read italics. Every stone is a block whose weight would try the most powerful machines. They are, in a word, scattered throughout the globe, masses before which the world materials seem to remain inexplicable, at the sight of which imagination is confounded, and that had to be endowed with the name as colossal as things themselves, besides which these immense rocking stones, called sometimes routers, placed upright on one of their sides as a point, their equipoise being so perfect that the slightest touch is sufficient to set them in motion, betray a most positive knowledge of statistics, reciprocal counter motion, surfaces plane, convex, and concave in turn. All these allies them to Cyclopean monuments, of which it can be said, with good reason, repeating after De la Vega, that the demons seem to have worked on them more than man. For once we agree with our friends and foes, the Roman Catholics, and ask whether such prodigies of statistics and equilibrium apply to masses weighing millions of pounds can be the work of Paleolithic savages, of cavemen taller than the average man in our century, yet ordinarily mortals as we are. It is no use for our purpose to refer to the various traditions attached to the rocking stones. Hang on, guys. I got a cough. Still, it may be as well to remind the English reader of another name I cannot pronounce, Cambronese, who speak of such a stone on the Isle of Mona, which returned to its place, and every effort made to keep it elsewhere notwithstanding. At the time of the conquest of Ireland by Henry II, Count Hugo Crescentis, desiring to convince himself of the reality of the fact, tried that Mona stone to a far bigger one and had them thrown into the sea. On the following morning, it was found in the accustomed place. The learned William of Salisbury warrants the fact by testifying to its presence in the wall of a church where he had seen it in 1554. And this remains one of the Pliny said of the stone left by the Argonauts of Cyzicum, which the Cynthians had placed in the Prytania, whence it ran away several times, which forced them to lead it. Here we have immense stones stated by all antiquity to be living, moving, speaking, and self-preambulating. They were also capable, it seems, of making people run away, since they have been called routers, to put to flight, to rout. And Des Mausiou shows them all to be prophetic stones, called mad stones. The rocking stone is accepted in science. Why did it rock? Why was it made to do so? One must be blind not to see that this motion was one more means of divination, and that they were called for this very reason the stones of truth. This is history, the past of prehistoric times, warning the same in latter ages. The Dracontia, sacred to the moon, and the serpent were the more ancient rocks of destiny in older nations whose motion of rocking was a code perfectly clear to the initiated priests, who alone had the key to this ancient reading. Wormius and Olaus Magnus show that it was according to the orders of the oracle, whose voice spoke through the immense rocks, raised by the colossal powers of ancient giants, that the kings of Scandinavia were elected. In India and Persia, says Pliny, it is she, the Persian, or whatever that word is, who the Magi had to consult for the election of their sovereigns. A rock overshadowing Harpasa in Asia and placed in such a manner that a single finger can move it, while the weight of the whole body makes it resist. Why then should not the rocking stones of Ireland or those of Burham in Yorkshire have served for the same mode of divination or ocular communications? The hugest of them are evidently the relics of the Atlanteans. The smaller ones, such as the Burnham rocks, with some revolving stones on their summit, are copies from the more ancient lithi. Had not the bishops of the Middle Ages destroyed all the plans of the Dracontia, they could lay their hands on science, would know more of these. As it is, we know that they were universally used during long prehistoric ages, and all for the same purposes of prophecy and magic. E. Bayet, a member of the Institute of France, published in his Antiquité de France an article showing the Chatham per Amba, the field of death, or ancient burial grounds in Malabar, to be identical with the old tombs of Karnak, a prominent and central tomb. The bones are found in them, the tombs, he says, and Mr. Hillwell tells us that some of those are enormous, the natives of Malabar, calling the tombs the dwellings of Rakshas, giants. Several stone circles, considered the work of the however you pronounce that, as all such monuments are in India, are numerous in that country when opened by the direction of Raja Vasarati, were found to contain human bones of a very large size. Again, Deville is right in his generalization, if not in his conclusions, as a long-cherished theory that the Dracontia are mostly witness to great natural geologic commotions and are the work of nature, is now exploded. His remarks are very just. Before the impossibility of such a theory is asserted, we advise science to reflect, and above all, no longer to class titans and giants among primitive legends, for their works are there under our eyes, and those rocking stones will oscillate on their base to the end of the world to help them to see clearer and realize one for all that one is not altogether a candidate for Shartun, Shartintingen. Holy crap, my brain don't work today for believing in wonders certified by the whole of antiquity. Sorry, guys. I am not good with names. Just a FYI, it's beyond the projection brain shit. It's everything. Not good with names. It is just what we can never repeat too often, though the voices of both my brain's off now because I threw myself off. The voices of the occultists and Roman Catholics are raised in the desert. Nevertheless, no one can fail to see that science is an inconsistent, to say the least, in its modern speculations, as was ancient and medieval theology, in its interpretations of the so-called revelation. Science would have men descend from the pithcoid ape, a transformation requiring millions of years, and yet fears to make mankind older than 100,000 years. Science teaches the gradual transformation of species, natural selection and evolution from the lowest form to the highest, from mollusk to fish, from the reptile to bird and mammalian. Yet it refuses to men, who physiologically is only a higher mammal and animal, such transformation of his external form. But if the monstrous iguanon of the Wilden may have been the ancestor of the diminutive iguana of today, why would not the monstrous man of the secret doctrine have become the modern man, the link between animal and angel? Is there anything more unscientific in this theory than in that of refusing to man any spiritual immortal ego, making of him an automation and ranking him at the same time as a distinct genius in the system of nature? Occult sciences may be less scientific than the present exact sciences. They are withal more logical and consistent in their teachings. Physical forces and natural affinities of atoms may be sufficient as factors to transform a plant into an animal, but it requires more than a mere interplay between certain material aggregates and their environment. To call to life a fully conscious man, even though we were no more indeed than a ramification between two poor cousins of the quadramulous order. Occult sciences admit that Haeckel, that objective life on our globe, is a logical postulate of scientific natural history. But add that the rejection of a like spiritual involution from within, without, of invisible subject, spirit life, eternal, and a principle in nature is more illogical, if possible, than to say that the universe and all in it has been gradually built by blind forces inherent in matter without any external help. Suppose an occultist were to claim that the first grand organ of a cathedral had come originally into being in the following manner. First, there was a progressive and gradual elaboration in space of an organizable material, which resulted in the production of a state of matter named organic protein. Then, under the influence of incident forces, those states have been thrown into a phase of unstable equilibrium. They slowly and majestically evolved into and resulted in a new combination of carved and polished wood, of brass pins and staples, of leather and ivy, and windpipes and bellows, after which, having adapted all its parts into one harmonious symmetrical machine, the organ simply and suddenly pealed forth Mozart's Requiem. This was followed by a sonata of Beethoven ad infinitum, its keys playing of themselves and the wind blowing into the pipes by its own inherent force and fancy. What would science say to such a theory? Yet it is precisely in such wise that the materialistic savants tell us that the universe was formed with its millions of beings and man its spiritual crown. Whatever may have been the real inner thought of Mr. Herbert Spencer when writing on the subject of the gradual transformation of species, what he says it applies to our doctrine. Construed in terms of evolution, every kind of being is conceived as a product of modifications wrought by insensible graduations on a pre-existing kind of being. Then why, in this case, should not historical man be the product of a modification on a pre-existent and prehistorical kind of man, even supposing for argument's sake that there is nothing within him to last longer than or live independently of his physical structure? But this is not so, for when we are told that organic matters are produced in the laboratory by what we may literally call artificial evolution, we answer the distinguished English philosopher that alchemists and great adepts have done as much and indeed far more before the chemists ever attempted to build out of disassociated elements complex combinations. The homunci of Paracelsus are a fact in alchemy and will become one in chemistry very likely. And then Miss Shelley Frankenstein will have to be regarded as a prophecy, but no chemist or alchemist either will ever endow such a Frankenstein's monster with more than animal instinct, unless indeed he does that which the progenitors are credited with, namely, if he leaves his own physical body and incarnates in the empty form. Chucky. But even this would be an artificial, not a natural man, for our progenitors had, in the course of eternal evolution, to become gods before they became men. The above digression, if one, is an attempt at justification before the few thinking men of the coming century who may read this, but this accounts also for the reason why the best and most spiritual men of our present day can no longer be satisfied with either science or theology, and why they prefer any such psychic craze to the dogmatic assertions of both, neither of the two having anything better to offer than blind faith in their respective infallibility. Universal tradition is indeed the far safer guide in life. And universal tradition shows primitive man living for ages together with the creators and first instructors, the Elohim, in the world's Garden of Eden, or delight. We shall treat of the divine instructors in stanza 12. Interesting. The first great waters came, they swallowed the 7 great islands. All holy saved, the unholy destroyed. With them, most of the huge animals produced from the sweat of the earth. As this subject, the 4th great deluge on our globe, in this round, is fully treated in the chapters that follow the last stanza, to say anything more at present would be repetition. The 7 great islands, Dwarpas, belong to the continent of Atlantis. The secret teachings show that the deluge overtook the 4th giant race, not on account of their depravity or because they had become black with sin, but simply because such is the fate of every continent, which, like everything else under the sun, is born, lives, becomes decrepit, and dies. This is when the fifth race was in its infancy. Thus the giants perished, the magicians and the sorcerers, adds the fancy of popular tradition, but all holy saved, and alone the unholy were destroyed. This was due, however, as much to the provision of the holy ones who had not lost the use of their third eye as to karma and natural law. Speaking of the subsequent race, our fifth humanity, the commentary says, alone the handful of those elect whose divine instructors had gone to inhabit the sacred island, from whence the last Savior will come, now kept mankind from becoming one half the exterminator of the other, as mankind does now. Mankind became divided. Two-thirds of it were ruled by dynasties of lower material spirits of the earth, who took possession of the easily accessible bodies. One-third remained faithful and joined with the nascent fifth race, the divine incarnates. When the poles moved for the fourth time, this did not affect those who were protected and who had separated from the fourth race. Like the Lemurians alone, the ungodly Atlanteans perished and were seen no more. And that ends stanza 11. Next time, we're going to read stanza 12, the fifth race and its divine instructors. Oh, that's going to be fantastic. Yay. Amazing. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Sorry for not being able to pronounce certain names. I cannot do French. Sometimes I can get Latin out. Greek, definitely not. I'm not worldly in that way. I'm just not. So I do apologize. I get frustrated. It gets me upset. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed. It's an interesting take for sure. I mean, what is really interesting now that we are moving in another epoch, we're leaving one, we're moving into another one, and we're doing a minor and a major change right now that's happening now. We're seeing evolution go from the bottom back up. We're seeing people literally grow back into what we would consider giants. There are a lot of there was more taller people now in the world than there was maybe 60 years ago. I mean, there's always the anomaly of somebody being 7 foot or 8 foot, and those are the World Book Records, holders, but a lot more people are coming in and they're it's like a beyond 6'5". So there is, we're going back up, we're moving on up. So I guess the next coming of the couple of generations incoming are going to start seeing a lot of growth in terms of height. I noticed this around me. A lot of the kids that were in fourth grade, they don't look like they're in. I know what I look like in fourth grade. I was tiny. I was a little shrimp. Most of these kids are just about my height. And they look like they're 5 years older than they are or in like appearance. Like they look older than their fourth grade child adolescent self. It's insanity. Um, yeah, it blows my mind. Uh, so who's to see, if we took a look at the paradigms, the stones, we're still debating today in this time space, even though a lot of us perceive how the pyramids were made, I think a lot of us are coming to a gradual understanding that is frequency and vibration. Could there have been giants? Absolutely. What do you think? Ra and all Semet and all of them were there. They were extraterrestrials. So did they build for us? Sure. Were we a part of it? I'm sure we were. But we have to take notice that they were giants. I know I was a giant. I have that memory. I had been shown that I was, interestingly enough. And then we have to take the notion of nos confunding, if you're into those, books, to look beyond the wall and what came beyond the wall to help save humanity again. We never know. But it's very interesting to contemplate these things and to bring her understandings to the 20th modern century. And with that, sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within. Be the soldier, be the lighthouse, seed your truths, light that path forward. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. It's free. Energy is a click. It's free, sort of. It helps me and it helps spread out, getting higher consciousness coming in. I'm about trying to get you all out of the one book paradigm, those of you who are stuck in the one book. And that is the one book and you're not moving from it. And you don't have to move from it, but at least have an open mind. Think for yourself critically. Think, explore. The world is a vast amazement. And when we're narrowing down ourselves because we've been indoctrinated or told this is the way, there's many ways, and there's many ways back to source. So don't limit yourself. And until the next time, guys, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye for now.